At the opening of the 18th century, Annapolis stands along the Severn River, a compact colonial town shaped by water access, shallow inlets, and tidal rhythms that connect it steadily to the wider Chesapeake trading world. In this period, its geography defines its function, positioned between fertile tobacco plantations and navigable waterways, allowing ships to anchor close to shore while goods move inland through smaller creeks, establishing Annapolis as both a port and administrative center. The town's streets develop without rigid planning, following the contours of land and shoreline, while the State House Circle begins to emerge as a focal point, symbolizing the growing importance of governance within Maryland's proprietary colonial system. Early 18th century Annapolis reflects a society structured around tobacco cultivation, where planters rely on transatlantic markets, exporting leaf to Britain while importing manufactured goods, binding local prosperity to imperial trade networks and fluctuating overseas demand. Labor systems underpin this economy, with enslaved Africans forming a significant portion of the workforce, their forced labor sustaining plantation output and shaping demographic patterns that influence the town's social hierarchy and long-term institutional development. Merchants and factors operate within Annapolis, coordinating shipments, extending credit, and managing relationships with British firms, embedding the town within a wider Atlantic economy where debt, risk, and seasonal cycles govern commercial decision-making. By mid-century, Annapolis develops a reputation as a refined colonial capital, with brick houses, public buildings, and formal spaces reflecting wealth generated from agriculture and trade, while also signaling aspirations toward British cultural and architectural standards. The presence of the colonial legislature reinforces Annapolis's political role, as assemblies convene to debate taxation, land policy, and governance, shaping Maryland's internal affairs while remaining subject to the authority of the British Crown and proprietary oversight. Social life in Annapolis includes gatherings, performances, and intellectual exchange among elites, yet these activities remain limited to a narrow segment of society, reflecting divisions based on wealth, race, and legal status embedded within colonial structures. Religious institutions also take root, with Anglican churches serving as centers of community organization, reinforcing moral frameworks while aligning closely with established authority, contributing to the maintenance of social order within the colonial environment. As the century progresses, tensions emerge within the imperial system, particularly regarding taxation and representation, as colonial leaders begin to question policies imposed from Britain, setting the stage for political transformation within Annapolis and beyond. The Stamp Act crisis of 1765 resonates within the town, prompting resistance among local leaders and merchants, who view the measure as an overreach of parliamentary authority, challenging established economic practices and colonial autonomy. Public response includes organized opposition and the formation of committees, reflecting a shift toward collective political action, as Annapolis becomes a site where local grievances intersect with broader colonial resistance movements across British North America. Economic disruption follows political unrest, as trade boycotts and uncertainty affect merchants and planters alike, revealing the vulnerability of Annapolis's economy to external decisions and highlighting the interconnected nature of commerce and governance. By the early 1770s, political divisions deepen, with debates over loyalty and resistance shaping discourse within the colony, as Annapolis navigates its role within a changing imperial relationship marked by increasing confrontation and ideological divergence. The burning of the Peggy Stewart in 1774 becomes a defining local, when a ship carrying tax tea is destroyed, symbolizing defiance against British policy and demonstrating the intensity of colonial protest within the town's harbor. This act carries social consequences, reinforcing divisions between supporters of resistance and those favoring accommodation, while also consolidating a sense of shared purpose among those advocating for greater autonomy from imperial control. Annapolis's geographic position continues to influence events, as its accessible harbor facilitates both commerce and the movement of ideas, allowing political developments to spread quickly through networks of communication linking towns across the Chesapeake region. With the outbreak of armed conflict in 1775, Annapolis shifts from protest to participation, contributing resources and leadership to the revolutionary cause, while maintaining its role as a center of political coordination within Maryland. During the war years, the town experiences strain, as trade disruptions and military demands alter economic patterns, yet its institutional structures persist, enabling governance and administration despite the uncertainties of ongoing conflict. By 1783, Annapolis briefly serves as the capital of the United States, hosting the Continental Congress, a moment that reflects its established political infrastructure and symbolic importance within the newly independent nation. This period leaves a lasting structural legacy, as Annapolis's development illustrates how geography, economy, and governance interact over time, shaping a town that evolves from colonial outpost to political center within an emerging national framework. Following the departure of the Continental Congress in 1784, Annapolis enters a period of recalibration, as its brief prominence as a national capital gives way to quieter administrative functions within Maryland. While its harbor continues to sustain regional commercial activity, the town's geographic setting remains central to its identity, with the Severn River providing access to the Chesapeake Bay, ensuring that maritime trade persists despite wartime disruptions, linking Annapolis to coastal markets and inland producers through established shipping routes. Post-war economic adjustments prove uneven, as merchants attempt to restore trade connections severed during conflict, while planters face fluctuating prices for tobacco and other crops, revealing the fragility of an economy long dependent on imperial structures. Now abruptly dissolved credit networks shift during these years, with local financiers and merchants assuming greater responsibility in the absence of British backing, leading to tighter lending practices and a cautious approach to investment that slows immediate recovery within Annapolis's commercial community. The social hierarchy endures, though subtle changes begin to emerge, as revolutionary ideals introduce new discussions about rights and governance, even while entrenched systems, including slavery, continue to define labor and maintain established patterns of inequality. Political authority consolidates at the state level, with Annapolis serving as Maryland's capital, hosting legislative sessions that address post-war governance, taxation, and legal reform, shaping policies intended to stabilize society after years of upheaval and uncertainty. Debates within the Maryland Assembly reflect broader national concerns, particularly regarding the balance between state sovereignty and collective governance, as leaders grapple with the limitations of the Articles of Confederation and the need for more effective coordination. Economic strain contributes to these discussions, as inconsistent trade regulations among states hinder commerce, prompting Annapolis officials to recognize the necessity of cooperation beyond local interests, especially in managing tariffs, currency stability, and interstate exchange. In 1786, Annapolis hosts a convention aimed at addressing commercial issues among the states, drawing delegates who acknowledge the inadequacy of existing frameworks and call for a broader meeting to reconsider national governance structures. Although attendance at the convention remains limited, its implications are significant, as it leads directly to the proposal for the Philadelphia Convention, positioning Annapolis as a catalyst in the movement toward drafting a more cohesive federal constitution within the town. Daily life continues with a measure of stability, as artisans, shopkeepers, and laborers maintain local economies, while public spaces serve as venues for discussion, reinforcing Annapolis's role as both a political and social gathering point. Religious institutions retain influence, offering continuity in a period of transition, as churches provide structure and community support, reinforcing moral expectations while adapting gradually to the ideological shifts introduced by independence and Republican governance. Education and intellectual exchange gain modest traction, with increased interest in civic knowledge and governance, reflecting a broader cultural movement that values informed participation in public affairs, particularly among the town's emerging professional classes. Despite these developments, disparities remain pronounced, as enslaved individuals continue to experience coercion and exclusion, underscoring the contradiction between revolutionary rhetoric and social realities embedded within Annapolis and the wider Chesapeake region. The port adapts to new trade patterns, engaging with a wider range of international partners beyond Britain, though these connections develop slowly, constrained by limited infrastructure and the lingering effects of wartime disruption on shipping and finance. Urban development proceeds incrementally, with existing structures maintained and modest expansions undertaken, reflecting both economic caution and the enduring importance of Annapolis as a seat of governance rather than a rapidly growing commercial hub. Political culture evolves during these years, with increased emphasis on representation and accountability, as elected officials respond to constituents shaped by revolutionary experiences and expectations for more participatory forms of government. The town's administrative functions reinforce its stability, as courts, legislative bodies, and public offices continue to operate, providing continuity and reinforcing Annapolis's institutional significance within Maryland's political landscape. Long-term structural changes begin to take shape, as the transition from a colonial economy to an independent system introduces new challenges, including diversification, regulatory development, and the gradual reorientation of trade relationships. These adjustments occur within a broader national context, where states experiment with governance under the Articles of Confederation, Revealing weaknesses that influence local decision-making and contribute to calls for constitutional reform. Annapolis's experience during this period illustrates the interconnected nature of geography, economy, and politics, as its harbor, institutions, and social structures collectively shape its trajectory within the early United States. By the close of this phase, the town stands as a reflective example of post-revolutionary adaptation, balancing continuity with gradual transformation.